Giannoutsos, Educational Masters from Oldham University. I am in Second Life, more commonly known as Bluebarker Lowtide, and we're going to be talking about the perspectives on virtual professional learning communities. And I feel that I should put a disclaimer that this is probably going to be a mix of a lot of different things. It's going to be part lecture, part time capsule, part biography, but I think the parts that I have all together kind of mix well into what I want to get across to you guys for my presentation. So I really did want to talk because I was like, oh, Zinnia yesterday was talking about her feathers in a cap, and I was like, gosh, you took my snowflake. But I will say that whenever we talk about things in virtual worlds, no, it's good. It's all good, Zinnia. Whenever we talk about things in virtual worlds, I want us to really think about it as like a snowflake. Thank you. Thank you, Zinnia. Because the thing about virtual worlds, the content, the people that you meet, they're like beautiful moments in time, and you can't really save Snowflake. You can try to. You can take pictures, you can do videos, but it's never really going to replace actually being there. And I just wanted that to sink in a bit, because when we talk about what we're doing in virtual worlds, how long is it going to be staying with us for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? There's a lot can happen in that amount of time, and I want us to, be here in the moment that we're all together doing things. Yes, very good word for that, ethereal. Thank you, Ian. And so there was a study done, Dr. Masu Enrio. He does this water experiment. This was back in 2011, 2009. And he was looking at how when you talk to water, it kind of changes the shape, the crystalline structure. And when you do positive things, like thank you, and you have wisdom, you have very nice structures. But when you say mean things, when you tell them like, oh, you're sick, it's evil, it changes the structure. And I want us to really put that in perspective for when we think about Second Life, when we think about virtual worlds as a whole. Are we looking at it from, from the positive outlook, or are we looking at it through a very negative one? And I think a lot of people that are strangers to virtual worlds don't understand it, and they automatically put on those negative lenses. And I think that's what all they're going to see sometimes, and it ruins the beauty of what it really is and what you can do with the potential and possibility that virtual worlds, especially education within virtual worlds, that potential is something that we don't readily see sometimes. But definitely what we're doing here, holding conferences, we're doing lectures and sessions, it's a very good place to be. It fills you with a positive energy, and you are happy that you're here. I know I am every time this comes around every April/March. And so I know even knowing me within a virtual community, I'm very reluctant to talk about my backgrounds. And so I know that starting young, very early doing video games, MMOs, so we have World of Warcraft up there, Heroes Online, All Points Bulletin, Final Fantasy XI, Minecraft, Terra, Second Life. Those are all the little portraits around that is, is contributing to who I am as a person. And they ultimately change my way of thinking, change who I am in here and outside of the virtual environment. It changes how I interact in my classroom. It talks about the different ways that I do things. And so you'll see on my far left is probably the first ever time I actually entered into the virtual world of Second Life, and this was the avatar that I have that I'm currently wearing right now. And if anyone has ever known me, that I can probably have so many avatars in my backpack that I can't go through all of it. But I just want to let you know that from like the beginning, we all have a certain idea of how we think things should be, especially when we're like, I want to be professional, and I want to be in Second Life, I want to do something that's positive, and sure, I'm all for education. Here I am with a necktie and collar. It's very what I'm expected to wear. And then when you take virtual worlds, you realize that you can make it anything that you want. And so I started expanding outward and doing very different avatars. I did robots, animals, and changing very different things to, express sometimes the time, the event, how I'm feeling. It changes whenever I'm really online, to be honest. So last part of my background is that I'm probably first and foremost, when I look at things, I'm a graphic and instructional designer by trade. I'm dealing with 2D and 3D elements for multimedia marketing and learning management systems. So I have worked with traditional print, video, web, and mobile mediums. But I knew that once social media hit the scene, I knew that would change advertising probably for the worst. It has been more accessible to everybody. Everyone sees advertising happening, but I always felt like it was negatively going to impact people. And so me working as I am, I did lots of user interface, I did lots of psychology studies, and there's a lot of manipulation that goes along with online marketing, especially with social media. And so when we're taught in advertising, we're looking at the forest and not the trees. And then sometimes you have to flip and be looking at the trees and then not the forest. And when we talk about that metaphor, we talk about we're looking at your consumers or you're looking at your individual customers. And when social media hit the scene, you could manipulate everything. And it was a very scary place to be. So then I turned to education. So about this time, 9 years ago, it's about 2010, I'm finishing up my digital arts degree program, and I'm entering an internship. And then I was doing advertising and design for a while. And then 8 years ago, I was doing an internship. After the internship, I returned back to school to get my master's in education. And right now I'm finishing up my master's thesis project on collecting data for my thesis paper. And it was entitled Motivation Through Subjects and Mediums of Interest. And so at the time, we were looking at things in a very black and white area. It was either going to be synchronous, meaning it was happening right then and there, or asynchronous, meaning that you could come back at your time, at your discretion, and you could do that. And that study focused on forums. And so lots of different forums existed back in the day, and some still do. Reddit, Neopets, there was a medical educational journal up there. And one of them was just a newsprint one that I developed just for educational technology. And then one down there is called Experience Project, which is no longer active, but I felt played a very important role in disguising, or actually into figuring that avatars are all people. And when you look at Experience Project, it was a experiment to see how people would react if they were in a very safe and honest place and they could share whatever stories they heard. It was a no judgment zone area. And people showed a lot of stories, lots of some triumphs, some failures, and being able to talk and, type it out and put it online was a huge step for some people. And I was a quote unquote kind of like moderator, trying to make sure that everything was staying clean and that people were being, copacetic with one another. And it's really sad that that's not available anymore. But there were other things that have replaced it in instead. Oh, oops. I'm using arrow keys to move my slides. And so this brings us to about my 2011. So in about 2011, this was the time I found ISTE and virtual worlds. So at one of my classes when obtaining my master's was talking about new media education. I was like, that sounds like a fun class. I have no idea what new media is, but we'll figure it out. And so Dr. Sharon Wiley, who is someone who is actually now working for NASA, we keep in touch every now and then, but she brought us into virtual worlds and Second Life. Now, I had been in Second Life back in 2006, 2007, but at the time, my account was hacked, so it kind of got like negative vibes. So I hadn't touched Second Life until 2011. And so when I came back in, I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. And it felt like the environment had changed. And especially using it as an educational, I hadn't done that before. Usually it was just, oh, Second Life is a fun game. But that was definitely not the title that my professor used it at. And when you're looking at it, we held our classes in Second Life, and she held office hours, and we were told to go and find at least one educational sim. Now, I will tell you that at the time, I wasn't sure what I was looking for. So then she was like, let's look at ISTE. So ISTE stands for the International Society for Technology and Education. And being an instructional designer, I was like, oh, awesome, EdTech. And so I was then surrounded with people that were not just currently where I lived, but it was everywhere. And that's when it really hits you that when you look at virtual worlds, it's not just local, it's regional, worldly, international, it's everybody. And I think it was a very changing experience to understand that when you look at that kind of thing, you're looking at it's bigger than yourself. And so that brings us to Lisa Dolly. Now, Lisa Dolly wasn't introduced to me during my master's. I wish she was, because her work was out at the time. But this didn't come in until Games MOOC with Kay Novak and Abacus Capellini. And we were looking at the social network knowledge construction. We were looking at emerging virtual world pedagogy. Pedagogy, when you normally look at it, is like, how do people learn? And when you tie virtual worlds to that, it changes the picture entirely. And so you're looking at, this is where my multitasking comes in. On the left side is a whole bunch of speech bubbles. I don't know if it's rendering up there properly. It may not. I apologize in advance. But what those bubbles are representing the different ways that you communicate. You're communicating within the virtual world, the different mechanisms. So that would be like group notices, the chat feature, newsletters, events, conferences. But then on the triangle side, where the diamond is looking at the way you guys communicate outside of it. So that could be a blog, social media, email, Twitter, the list goes on and on. So when we look at that way of communicating, we're also looking at how people are participating. And so on the table one, on the right-hand side, we're looking at the matrix for designing the social knowledge constraints. And one, it looks like identifying networks. You're looking for something. And you're not sure what it is yet, but you're looking for something, and you'll kind of get a feel for it. And then you get into two, lurking. Lurking is you kind of just entered, and you're observing, and you're slowly learning the culture and norms of what's going on. Three, the next level, you're contributing. So you're talking with other people, you're interacting. You start to help other people because you are less of a novice, and you're slowly learning more and more. And then four is the next level is creating. You're creating something within that environment, within that network, within that social network. And that could be a blog, it could be a poster. You're building things for the environment. You build a house. You are sharing things with people. Creating in Second Life is a wonderful place to be because it's only limited by your imagination. And then the fifth level is probably leading. And this is where you're taking a much more stronger approach, and you're being much more involved. You're facilitating things, you're learning, and you're talking. You're possibly taking a leadership role as a facilitator, whether we're using a vice president, vice chair, head of state, or madam president, whatever term you want to use. You're putting yourself aligned with that group, and you put yourself out there, and you're now within that group, and you look at yourself, and you're like, your name, who you are, what you look like is kind of synonymous with that group. And of course, that is something that definitely is something real world plays about. Like, you have different like sports people. They're associated with different sports teams. Same thing with here, but as we look at education, we look at it in the sense of what kind of educational things are you doing? Is that virtual worlds, Unity, virtual reality? The spectrum for virtual worlds is very large. So the power of lurking. I will say that when we look at lurking, I want us to kind of go back to my snowflakes, and that when you're a lurker, you're just an individual snowflake. You yourself are an individual different from everybody else, but you're just there as a presence in that moment. And so you could just be if you're on a forum, you're just looking and scrolling past the subreddits and the different forums. Maybe you're reading, but you're not really commenting, you're not upvoting anything. And then that's just you as an individual. But when you look at it, a whole bunch of people lurking, a whole bunch of people looking at things, that's essentially the YouTube views. You got a nice snow patch. It's snowing. It's white on the ground. It's really wonderful. But then when you actually, people are contributing from the lurking, that's when you're making snowballs, building snowmen. We're doing things, we're interacting. And so it's a snowball effect. I can't believe I'm such a but it is a snowball effect. It's something that starts very small, and you may not nothing may come out of it at all. But eventually, you're starting to roll up. You're starting to build your interactions, your engagement. It becomes more than what you thought it was. I would definitely say that's how it started with virtual worlds for me. Maybe it's worked with some of you guys as well, or something else outside of virtual worlds. It could be something completely different. Maybe you're also a secret Unity fan, or someone who loves Makerspace or Minecraft. All the power to you. And so going from virtual worlds, I think I was at 2012 VWBPE. We were doing virtual world tours, excursions, like off-worlding experiences. And one of them was WoW. And this was headed by Kay Novak and Abacus Capellini. And so I had done WoW a long time ago. I got my fill of it, and then I stopped doing it. And they were like, well, you could use World of Warcraft for educational purposes. And I was like, really? So that was the hook, line, and sequel for me. So we got put into a virtual world. So I would definitely say this was the first time in an MMO, a massively multiplayer online RPG role-playing game, where I'd actually gotten to the level cap. Granted, its level cap has increased twice since I've been on, but I would actually finally got to level 90. It was a great accomplishment. It was fun. But we were learning together. We were learning about the game mechanics. We were learning about educational principles, different tools and models. It was a great experience. I'm sure some of you guys that are still in WoW still do it because it is fun. Hopefully I'll get back in. I just know that my time is super limited sometimes these days. I know, right? I will someday, Thunder. Hopefully my character is still available for me to use. But this could also be applied to other MMO games, so not just World of Warcraft. There was Terra. I think right now I'm doing some Elder Scrolls Online stuff. It's a shame that WildStar closed. That was fun. Star Wars: The Old Republic closed. It's a virtual space. And when I look at that again, remember it's that snowflakes effect. They're great and they're visual for a time, but they're not going to last forever. I'm saying that World of Warcraft is probably an exception because it has such a very strong following from the original. But nothing is set in stone. It's just a really amazing snowflake that we have to appreciate. And so I hadn't really gotten into VSTE at the time, but once I've been working with ISTE, I was like, oh, there's a local group. So VSTE is Virginia Society for Technology and Education, and so that was I met Thunder, Jazz, Minimus, and a lot of Mandy Minimus, Day, Beth, lots of great people. Some of them are still here today, in the audience even. And it's looking back, I think I was just someone who kind of was there. I think back then we didn't even have a formal place. I think I just pretty much sat there on the side. I'd log in. I maybe was kind of late. I was lurking at the time because I wasn't sure how they did things because it was very different from ISTE, where ISTE was, we're just going to have a fireplace discussion, and VSTE, I did multiple different things. They changed their schedule quite often. And so it was also about this time that I started making a bunch of educational machinima. So machinima is using in-game footage to make and tell stories. And so that's all. Some of these are included in the resource links, note cards. And so there was a Machinima Fest that was SIGVE, stands for the Special Interest Group of Virtual Environments, that was headed by ISTE, and that was a competition they were having. Then we did short clips. We tried to keep them very limited. Like I said, 2012 was a big Machinima year for me because that's when I did the Volunteers Appreciation video. And looking at, this is now me creating content. I'm changing where I am in my participation level. I'm creating things now. And it didn't stop with just videos, or Machinima, I should say. There was also the Virtual Education Journal with Roxy Nero. And this was a journal dedicated to articles that involved how virtual environments and virtual worlds and education played a wonderful role together. It was a great article. It started back in May 2011, and it continued up to about the summer of 2018, where people got really busy, and maybe someone will pick up the mantle for Veg, but for right now it's on a little bit of a hiatus. And lots of different fun articles. And when you're in these virtual worlds, oh, I know, right? Roxy Nero and BJ Gearbox did a fantastic job on Veg. When you talk about, and you're meeting all these people in virtual worlds, it only became readily apparent to just start meeting people in real life. And so that was the different conferences. There was the ISTE conference in Atlanta, Georgia. VSTE conference was always in Virginia, so that was always easy to go to. We did cosplays. We set up a video game cafe. World of Warcraft. We did green screens. We ate out. We hung out. We knew each other by each other's avatar names. I think that's still the very funny thing, is that when we talk to people, we were just referring to people as their avatar names. And so these were great chances to meet people, especially with VSTE. There were folks that were in the state of Virginia where I am living now and working. So building great connections, networking. Oh, I know. Thank you, Serena. And so it was also at this time that we had the Games MOOC. So MOOC was the massively open online courses back in 2012, 2013. This is the picture of the old dino that used to be on ISTE. It's not there anymore, but we had different discussions in there. This was back when web on a prim still worked. And so I will say that, like I said, the presentations between ISTE and VSTE were very different. ISTE, we almost always had a campfire discussion where we'd sit around this campfire and we'd talk about things. Or we'd sit inside, maybe we'd have a guest speaker. But I will say, I remember the campfire discussions outnumbering the guest speakers many times. But I know VSTE is all about very different things. We did virtual tours. I will say, ISTE did do tours, like sim tours, where you'd go to different sims and explore them. But with ISTE, they operated under the name of Virtual Pioneers, and it was a separate next door parcel to them, but they were not 100% copacetic with one another. Yes. I'm gonna come to that, okay, Beth? I promise you. Yeah, well, ISTE was a very big entity, and VSTE was a very small one. So VSTE built a much better close-knit community. And so we had Rob Foreman come in. We did several book clubs, and some of the authors of the book clubs came in. We'd had lots of game nights, educational tools, building tutorials, lots of different things. But it wasn't until 2013 that we had our first fundraiser. And this was kind of like a big deal where we were starting to interact more with real life things. Not that education isn't real life, it is. But when we look at it, we are looking at this one dealing with trying to raise money for Vista Island. We had made a video about it. It was a real big to do, and I think the fun thing about Vista is that we were doing lots of different fundraisers. And so each year the theme would change. So would the timeframes. And so we had Enchanted at Vista. We had Starlight. We had Snowden at Vista. Very different themes. Starlight was in space. Enchanted was kind of like a Beauty and the Beast castle thing. And Snowden Vista was a log cabin. Everyone was trapped inside. And it was a very fun, good time to have. And I always look at these moments. I know I have so many pictures. I could fill up so many photo albums with all these pictures that I took. But I just had very simple pictures that I wanted. And so I think one of the things that we overlook is that all the planning that goes into events, whether it is the fundraisers, whether it is conversations, whether we're doing special guests, or just planning for the month in general. VSTE, ISTE, VEG, there's a picture of all of these meetings in here. I think Games MOOC is a little special because we didn't just do meetings in Second Life, we brought it into Google Hangouts. We could share our screens. It was a lot easier to do because we were also operating out of a website. That website is also in the resource link, so the Shivatal is, I think, the hosters. And so definitely planning. You're sitting around and you're talking. You maybe have a Google Doc up somewhere, and that's a lot of multitasking. You're talking with people, you're changing Google Docs. I think the great thing about Google Docs is that it is cloud-based and that you are changing things on the fly. And that changed things humongously because we'd either just have someone would create a Word document, then they would send it around, or just be an email, and it'd be this incredibly long email about things. And I think finally getting to the Google Cloud services was a great move for how virtual worlds started to plan things. And I'm certain that Science Circle, Science Island, Book Island, all those different other educational sims that some of them still exist, not as many as they used to. They operated in a very similar fashion where you'd have time planned out where you've had to meet and talk. And so I've kind of moved from beyond just being a lurker and a contributor and then a creator, but I'm also helping leading discussions. I'm signing up for let's do a demo on this Web 2.0 tool, or let's find someone to lead a book club in the summer. Like it was a little more diplomatic than I wanted it to be. It was a lot easier. I wanted it to be more diplomatic. So eventually, when we did book clubs, we wanted people to vote for the books they wanted. And so beforehand, we just picked a book, and that was the end of that story. But I think we started to become more trying to listen for what everyone wanted and what they needed. Yes, Rihanna, I think a lot of the times when you look at that progression, you're just, you're a lurker, you're testing the waters, and then once you feel like everything's safe and good and everything feels right, you contribute. And you start doing more things, you become a creator, you start working with everybody, you're starting to share the knowledge, and then as a leader, you're being someone that is helping promote the discussion, but also trying to share what you've learned and trying to encourage people to stay and do things within that environment. So especially if you're in public education, you have those PLCs, the professional learning community, where you're trying to work with other people in your building, but it's a little hit and miss sometimes. Sometimes you have a dream team working, and then other times you have people that just want to work by themselves and they're not going to contribute anything. And so it's a tough mix sometimes when you're in real life. But I think in Second Life, you had the chance, you looked around, you got a feel for people, and when you found a group that you liked, you stayed with it. And I think that's a lot can be said about educational communities and virtual worlds. When you found a place that was the right fit, like you're a puzzle piece, and it goes in there, it feels right, all the people are great. You build that repertoire with people, or rapport, I should say, with. And so I will not be the person I am today if I did not even remotely mention all these amazing people that have impacted me in my life here in education and virtual worlds. I know this list could be so much longer, but I really did want to do a good shout out to Milton Brome, who is also Simon Bignell. We have Keith David Reeves, who's Lowell, Lisa Dolly, she's amazing, Grid Jumper, BJ, Beth, Kay, Abacus, Jazz, Callie, Roxy, Buffy, of course Thunder, Day. I could have so many other people that have presented that I talked to. I know Gentle Heron, I couldn't find a good picture for her. Of course, Leo. Um, it was just so many. Yeah, when you build those connections, you're just expanding. It just gets bigger and bigger. I mean, you start with, hopefully maybe you have someone who's in that group, so you're just friends with one person, and then you slowly get friends with all of them. You're connecting those dots. Yeah, thank you, Leo. You just took the words right out of my mouth. And it's when we talk about virtual worlds, best practices in education, it's all of us meeting together, and we're making this really great thing. I don't know. Spiderweb is the correct visual, maybe, but it just starts from one place and it keeps going and expanding outward, and you're forming all those connections. I don't know if it's like 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon or something, or like maybe in like 20 connections, you may know someone that knows the Queen of England or something strange like that. But in education, it's a very small knit community, not super small, but I mean, when you know people, you're like, oh, I've heard of them. Oh, we talked once. Oh, I saw her present. It's a great way for people to meet and connect with one another. And I can't stress that enough. When you meet people, when you meet avatars, there are people behind them. And Zinnia is probably my most favorite person to see present, because she's just so connected and humanistic about what we're doing in here. And she has so much courage to be talking about certain things that I can't talk about, because it just hits me on an emotional level. Because for as long as I've been in virtual worlds and in online communities, some of them don't stay, and it hits you, and you're like, you put your heart in a vulnerable place, and you're like, can you do this again? Can you? And sometimes you deny yourself the chance to make new opportunities and experiences when you don't do something, because you're afraid of getting hurt and scared again. And so I think a big turning point for VSTE was when we split ourselves into trying to do different things outside of Second Life. I think Minecraft was kind of us separating our workload. Like, our focus had shifted into different places. And I'm saying now we've kind of reached a medium for it. But I mean, at the time, I think it was we had the crowd that was either gonna go to Minecraft, or the crowd that was gonna go to Second Life. And the Second Life crowd was slowly getting taken away by Minecraft. And I'm not saying I don't like Minecraft. I do. It has its place. It's a great educational tool for both young students and for higher education. And the overlap wasn't there at first. But I think now we have a better place for it. But like I said, I'm kind of going year by year. And so when I talk about the turning point, this is about 2013, 2016 is when some of these pictures are made. And so, I think that is, when we talked about this earlier, it hits a community, even a virtual world community. So we had a really dear friend, facilitator, Cyrus Hush, also known as Matthew Poole. He was a lead in the Exponential Central, Virtual Pioneers, ISTE, and VSTE, and he unexpectedly passed away. It was something that affected our educational community, and probably a lot of those, the ones that he had touched. We had a ceremony, remembrance ceremony in World, and we had a lot of people. I think we had about 63, 64 people had showed up. It almost crashed the sim, and the community was never the same, and it was just someone. And I had personally met him, but for some of the people that they had not met him, I think this was definitely a period of mourning for VSTE, and I think a lot of us were definitely not the same. I have this quote on here that it's sad when someone you know becomes someone you knew, by Henry Rollins. And it really is not just for Cyrus, but for a lot of the educational sims that are no longer with us, that you have all these great experiences, you meet lots of people, and then they just kind of go away. And it's not really just trying to figure out why it happened, because you can't explain why. But it's, again, I'm referring back to my snowflake metaphor, that it's a snowflake is individual, personable, and it's a beautiful thing while it's there, but snowflakes don't last forever. And Cyrus was a wonderful snowflake that I will probably never forget. Sorry. And so I did want to definitely talk about that the loss within the community definitely changed how we did things. And so leading forward into 2017, we now have a very distinct Minecraft solo for the VSTE VEPLN, the Virtual Environment Educational Community. And we had refurbished our entire island of Vista Island to be more mesh friendly. And so this was where I was starting to take reins, starting to lead as the main chair of VSTE. And there was a lot to do. There was heavy shoes to fill. Thundo had done such an amazing job. And so now that I'm taking this leadership role, I'm into the fifth and final level of being a participant. Lisa Dolly, it was a big responsibility. I will say that I think the laws of Cyrus Hush definitely affected how VSTE operated. Thank you, Zeppelin. And there were just some members that just couldn't continue, and we were sad to see them leave. But they're still a part of VSTE Island in some fashion. We have a resource building with as many past lectures as we could save, and just a lot of changes that VSTE Island had sought that we needed to change and hopefully adapt. Again, with 2018, we're doing more and different things. We did a photo contest. We had a Christmas display contest. We're still doing software demos. We're doing sim tours, and we're still doing building demos. And then Minecraft is still here. And we're reaching a point. We're trying to figure out what else can we do. I'm sorry if I'm missing some of the comments. There's a lot that I'm trying to cover before my time is up. And so I feel like 27 and 2018 were still facing a tough breaks. Things were changing. The membership was not as strong, and we're working on increasing that. We're working on our different outreach programs. But I will say, I feel that educational communities on Second Life are struggling. And I know that I love with VWBP, there's that surgence again. I always am filling up with this great hope that things will change and things will be better, and Second Life has its place in education, and it does. And there's just still so much that we haven't done yet that we've yet explored. And so when I'm looking to the future of VSTE 2019, we look at the future has not been paved yet in stone. We're still doing things, but I feel like it's my metaphor is snow. It's freshly fallen snow, and you're just looking out the window, and you don't know what's going to be out there until you go out there and do something in it. And so whether you're going to walk around in it, whether you're going to roll up and make a snowfall into a snowball fight, whether you're going to make some snowmen, it's fresh snow, and it happens every year that we just have this new blanket of snow, and we're not sure what's going to happen yet. And so I'm still using my arrow keys to push these PowerPoints. I really wanted to end with everyone really thinking about the snowflakes that they've had in their lives, and I want you all to remember them. And when you are thinking about them, think about them as positive as you can, because I can't say that virtual worlds will stay forever. I sure hope they do. They have their place, but if anything that has shown me in the past that online things have have a time about them, and that you appreciate and you enjoy them while they're here. And so I will encourage others, I will implore people, I will tell people the wonders and joys of education on Second Life while it's still here, and it's something that I'll always be hopeful that it will continue to be here, and that it will, all of us, all those individual snowflakes, and we're all creating this beautiful snowy scene together. So thank you.